Hello and welcome back to the Small Business Transformer Summit. Today I'm joined with Julian Hall, the Entrepreneur. He's an international speaker, a best-selling author, and he's an award-winning digital marketer who lives and breathes social media, the internet, and all things digital. In the last 11 years, Julian Hall has consulted for companies big and small, from bootstrap startups to investment banks. Let's meet Julian Hall now.
Just before we get started, so you know that we're here today for the Small Business Transformer Summit,
Yeah.
and we're just sharing some information with small business owners such as myself about the best way to get started in business and to get more sales, have more time, and hopefully generate more cash. Okay, great. So what have you been working on this week?
Good question. What I've been working on this week. So there are a number of projects which I've been incubating
Okay.
last year. A number of tech projects,
Okay.
a number of projects relating to the entrepreneur brand.
Mhm.
And yeah, essentially I've been working on some of those this week. I've been, working with a couple of clients, doing some consultative work and a couple of and mentoring a few young startups as well.
Okay. And with the tech work that you're doing, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so myself and a couple of partners are launching a family locator
Okay.
called Tribe. And yeah, I've been basically going through some of the tech today. In fact, I'll give you a sneak preview. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's
Okay.
an orange
Oh yeah, Tribe.
icon there.
Yep, I can see that.
Tribe, there you go.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's in development. We're just going through the last stages now.
Okay.
But it's myself and two quite experienced tech entrepreneurs, and we've got really high hopes for it. And yeah, it should, fingers crossed, be the next big thing in terms of family
Okay.
in the UK, and that will be launched in the next couple of weeks.
That sounds great. So how does it work? Is it about finding out your history or about people living today?
Yeah, no. So what happens? Yeah, so it's a family locator in the true sense of the word. So what it does is once you fire up the app,
Mhm.
it will tell you where all of the members of your tribe or your family or your close knit group of friends are on a map.
Okay.
So you can see where everybody is. So it provides an element of safety. It will tell you how long it will take, people to get home or to school or whatever.
Ah, okay.
There's like an internal messaging system, which is like a private WhatsApp type thing.
Ah, that sounds good.
That's kind of built into it as well. Yeah,
That sounds interesting, especially for myself as I have a young daughter, so I can see how
right.
that could be quite useful in the future.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're hoping people will find it equally as useful and see an immediate application as you have.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then with the startups that you're working with, what do you find to be the most common challenge at the moment?
The most common challenge with startups is probably thinking all the way through their idea. So, business today, successful businesses, they make
Mhm.
it look kind of easy. And so what it means is because the internet has lowered the barrier to
Mhm.
entry for, lots of different types of business
Yeah. Sorry, it's just frozen.
to to startup companies, um, and that's a good thing. However, because these successful make it look really easy, people don't do the necessary due diligence
Mhm.
on what's required to make that idea a real success. So and essentially what that boils down to is it's more work than people expected.
Right.
And when they really do realize how much work is involved,
Mhm.
a lot of them slow down or they fall to the wayside. And it's the reason why I always tell people who are starting a business that, you can't just do it for the money. You can't just do it because you think, it's a good industry to be in. You've got to do it because you have a passion for it and because you're really good at it as well.
Mhm.
So, if you have a passion for it, then when the workload piles on, you won't necessarily see it as hard work. You'll see it as something that you really enjoy. And you've got to be really good at it, otherwise you won't be able to add any extra value
Yeah.
to the consumer. And consumers, we're used to getting good value for things. We're used to getting good quality. So it's important to deliver a good product or service. Otherwise, no one's going to exchange their hard-earned cash for your for your product or service.
Right, okay. And so for startups, I think quite often, like what you're saying, you have to actually give even extra, like go above and beyond. Do you think it's always good to do that, or is it sometimes not cost effective?
Well, the trick is to go over and above in ways that don't have a high cost.
Okay.
So sometimes you've got to spend money, but back in the day, if a company wanted to do, do some advertising, get their brand out there,
Hmm.
they'd have to use traditional forms of advertising. So they'd have to put adverts, on a bus or on billboards or on the underground and so on and so forth, and that's obviously quite costly.
Yeah.
Whereas a brand today can just create, a viral video, and that goes crazy, and so does their brand. So it's not about cost; it's about creativity and understanding what your market want and what your market responds to. That's really important. And if you can do that, then you can always go over and above without it costing an arm and a leg.
So just based on what you were saying, and I know you're an online marketing expert, so what should be the top three or four things or a couple of things that a company can do when they're starting up to build their brand online?
There is actually one, there is a bit of a magic bullet, and I know
Okay.
people don't like to hear that there is a magic bullet, but
Yeah.
I believe there is one, and I've tried it for myself. I've done it for clients of mine and business partners, and
Hmm.
that is to create remarkable content, not just good content, but create
Okay.
remarkable content. And in content, we're talking about videos, blogs, articles.
Hmm.
It could just be tweets or whatever, Instagrams, whatever. But when you go online, nobody really goes to be sold. You don't go online to be sold to. You go online oftentimes to research, to find information, to be entertained, to update yourself with news, and
Yeah.
watch the latest whatever on the catch up on demand TV services and so on.
Hmm.
But what happens in your journey online is you will come across, inadvertently, you would come across some content that grabs your attention.
Hmm.
And if that content's good, it leads you down a rabbit hole of sorts, which could possibly convert you into, signing up to something, buying something, following somebody. But the hook is always that piece of content. And I think in today's market, anybody has the access to creating good content.
Okay.
Whatever it is. I mean, you and I are creating content as we speak right now,
Hmm.
content that you will then use and leverage your own brand.
Sure.
But it's all about creating content that is very, very good, that really does engage your market, and gives them something that they don't already have. And I think that that is if there was only one piece of advice, one piece of marketing or online marketing advice people took from this
Hmm.
session, that is to create amazing content. Doesn't matter what business you're running. I was speaking to an accountant today. Last week I was speaking to a hosting company. Before that, I was speaking to an insurance brokerage. But there is content that each one of those guys can create, which is directly or indirectly related to their core business.
Okay.
And that is really the key, is to create content that people will stick to.
Okay. Okay. And so how soon should a new business be on the internet? For example, have a website, Twitter, and Facebook.
As soon as you're able to respond to inquiries. What's really annoying, and we've all experienced this, is you click on an ad and a button doesn't work, or you
Yeah.
click on an email and it's broken, or nobody gets back to you, or you ring
Yeah.
a number and it goes to voicemail, and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we really want that product or service, and we're calling and calling and leaving emails and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because the business on the other end has just lost a customer, or at the very least they've lost some of their reputation. So
Mm.
I would say, put yourself out in the public domain when you are ready to do business. Kind of
Okay.
back in the day when, a bricks and mortar shop would open, and then they'd have that red sign which would say "Open for Business,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was almost the very last thing that they ever did on their front, on their door. As a kind of, it was almost like an event. We're finally open for business, and we
Yeah.
can allow people through the doors. But that's because they had done a lot of things prior to that point before they could turn that sign around.
Okay.
And I think in an online in the online world, you've got to make sure that you are ready to take on business before you start, putting your details up online and trying to get customers.
Yep, definitely. And then that leads me to the next question, which is what do you think about being the face of your brand? Does that apply to all industries, or is it best to kind of avoid it in some industries?
It's a good question. And what's interesting about that is almost every industry, not every company, but almost every industry has employed an ambassador or a face for their brand. So, for example, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when FUBU clothing launched, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
And right, cool. And it was LL. Now, they placed LL Cool J as the face of the brand, so much so that people thought LL Cool J was actually owned FUBU. Yeah, people actually thought it was LL Cool J's brand, and on that basis, people bought it, right? Now he was a very strong brand ambassador. In the same way, you have guys like Russell Simmons, brand ambassador for Fat Farm, and then P Diddy, brand ambassador for Sean John, and Jay-Z, brand ambassador for Rockaware, and so on and so on. I'm using all these hip hop analogies, sorry, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
But even bringing it more locally. So, for example, there's a accident advice helpline, one of the biggest personal injury companies in the UK. They use Esther Ranson as a brand ambassador. Santander use popular athletes and F1 racing car drivers. So they are always looking for a face for their brand, right? And even was it the Halifax for years used that quirky black guy with the glasses, right? Yeah. Howard or Harold or whatever his name was. So big companies try and create faces for the brand, and the reason they do that is because they don't have a face. Yeah, they are what would be described as a faceless corporation.
Right.
So what they try and do is they try and create a face. The reason why they try and create a face is because they've seen how smaller businesses and kind of more entrepreneurially led businesses have benefited from having a face as a brand.
Okay.
So the answer to the question, I think, is I'm leaning towards saying there is no instance where there shouldn't be a face applied to a brand.
Okay.
Because that is the people always say, what's your USP? Oh, I've got a business that does the same thing as lots of other companies. Well, in reality, the USP is you. You are the USP, and people do business with people they like. People buy into you as a business, and so on and so forth. So, if you want to have a clear USP where there isn't one, then the idea is to put yourself up front or to find a brand ambassador that will help to evangelize your product and service, so that, because, the reason why it's important is because people like people. It's as simple as that. People can relate to people. And if somebody endorses something, then that's a much better way to get consumer trust than if it's just, the faceless corporation.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's definitely an eye-opening tip, actually. And so to talk about you a bit more, I know that you grew up in Harlesden, which is quite near to where I grew up as well. I grew up in East Acton. Okay. So tell us a bit more about your story and how you started.
So how did I start? So I grew up in Harlesden, and my mother had the foresight to send me to a private school in Hammersmith.
Okay.
So I was very well educated, which I thank her for to this day. I went on to university to study biology, but I realized scientists don't really get paid. You've got to do it for the love. So I thought I've got to do something else, and that ended up being technology. So we're talking in the mid-90s. I thought, technology might be going somewhere, so let me jump on that.
Okay.
So I did that. Not long after that, I was headhunted into the city. Had a career in investment banking, but I'd always wanted to do my own business because, as a young boy, you're talking 5, 6, 7 years old. I remember, seeing my dad at his workplace, and he was, he'd come from Jamaica, set up his own car body workshop.
Okay.
And I remember, him. All I knew was that he was the boss. I wasn't quite sure what he did, but I saw him behind the table and people were in front of him. So I had this sense that he was the boss, and I wanted to do something similar. I wanted to be the boss too. And as I grew up, I realized the value of the freedom
Yeah.
that being the boss, as it were, would create. And being in investment banking, it further reinforced the fact that if you want to get the freedom you want, then you've got to really work for yourself.
Definitely, I agree.
But further to it was more than that, really. It was about the fact that I wanted to exercise my potential. So you can't do that in a 9-to-5 job. It's it's damn near impossible. So not having any restrictions in what I was able to do on a day-to-day basis meant that I could exercise my potential. In fact, my potential was stretched. I was constantly outside of my comfort zone, and I deliberately put myself outside of my comfort zone on a regular basis to ensure that I am growing and that my potential is being met.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of brought me up to the present day, really.
So just a question on what you mentioned, because you said you were headhunted by a top company in the city. So
Yeah.
why do you think that you were still restricted to develop your full potential? What was holding you back?
Well, because when you're in a 9-to-5 job, you have a job description, and that job description tells you exactly what you're expected to do day in, day out. And if they want year in, year out. And what I found I was good at, mastering a process and improving the process. But so that would mean if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, I could become very, very good at it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people. But once I became good at it, I became bored with it and I wanted to do something else. But I can do that quite quickly. So once you do that in a job, what happens is unless they promote you every 6 months, to do new things and whatever, it's very difficult to not feel like you're being restricted. And also, I'm not one for office politics and being promoted because you're drinking with the right kinds of people. So I wasn't really prepared to play that game because it didn't seem genuine to me. And it's very important that what I did was genuine and was me. So I didn't feel like I would turn into somebody else. So that's really, really important. And I think it's very important in business because people can tell when you're not real and when you're not being yourself. We have we're quite highly sensitized to the car salesman and syndrome.
Yeah.
And and when people are hard selling stuff and who are just blowing smoke and we kind of get that, and the only way you can not do that is if you're genuine. So that was quite important to me, and that's remained a common thread throughout my business. I won't do something if it doesn't feel genuine to me, because then I won't end up doing it well.
Right.
And that's really what it is. It's about I'm not just doing. I don't just want to be genuine because I'm some do-gooder. No, it's because if it's not genuine, I won't do a good job. If I don't do a good job, then my reputation is in jeopardy.
Right.
And early on in business, just to finish off, one thing I realized that I could control, because there are lots of factors in business you can't control, but one thing you can control is your reputation. Your reputation is down to what you do and what you don't do. So I did a lot to try and make sure that my reputation was intact.
Right. No, that's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that from you, because a lot of what you're saying is what I feel inside, but I've never expressed it. So to really hear that from you, that you can make those decisions and be successful, is really, really inspiring. And so I just wanted to ask, has there ever been a situation where sometimes your values or the way you do business was threatened and you had to turn down work, or how do you go about that?
No, if you go into there were some shops that you can go into. I remember growing up, and you'd go into the Chinese takeaway and you'd say, "Do you have any jerk chicken?" And they turn to the back and say, "Yeah, we have jerk chicken," right? And they don't do jerk chicken. But what I admired about it, and that whole stereotype, it's not, even though it might sound negative, it's actually quite positive, because what it meant is they were willing to do whatever it takes to please the customer, right? And what we did early on in our business, when we started off doing one thing, and somebody would come and say, "Oh, can you do X, Y, and Z?"
Right. Yeah.
And we'd go away and we think, can we do this, and can we deliver it well? And we'd always find a way to do that. And it's funny, the same thing happened to me last week. There was somebody who asked me to come in and do some staff motivation. And that's not something I've really done. It's not something that I've been trained to do, but he has seen me at another motivational session, and in his mind, it's exactly what his staff needed. So providing, it's interesting, because what you're able to do, people will find out other applications for it that you're not necessarily aware of.
Okay.
So you need to bear that in mind. But there are always creative ways to provide service.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I've never been offered something which was wildly outside of my core competence, or really, really challenged my core ethics.
Right.
But there was stuff that wasn't directly related. But if I felt I could add value, or the prospect felt I could add value, then I would work towards it. And all that really did was, it just started to widen the scope of what I was able to deliver, really.
Okay.
And in the meantime, it meant that I had exposure to something new and different, and it builds your repertoire, as it were.
Right. No, yeah, that's a great perspective. And if I may ask the $1 million question, what defines an entrepreneur?
So, have you ever played a team sport?
I used to play hockey a little bit.
Good stuff. Excellent. Good. So when you were playing hockey,
yeah,
the person who would, hit the puck into the back of the net, that person would get the credit for scoring that point or that goal, right? But if you took all of the other team members away, that person could not score the goal. Yeah. In entrepreneurship, that goal is normally defined as, the contract, the new client, the £1 million in the bank, being on the front cover of, the business magazine or whatever. That's generally the goal, right? But if you took away things like, your support network, your physical health, your mental health, the relationships with friends and family, self-esteem, and all of what I call assisting elements. If you took those assisting elements away, then you would never be able to succeed in business. And even if you did, you wouldn't be able to sustain it.
Okay.
And, we've all heard the stories about, the £1 million entrepreneur who has no friends, always on a life support machine, has got cancer, is about to die, is grey, depressed. We've all heard about those people, right? And that's not the way forward.
Okay.
But we've also heard about, the people who enjoy success in business, but also enjoy success in their life in general. And what entrepreneurship suggests is that by considering all of these assisting elements, it can actually make you a better business person.
Okay.
So I've been quite fortunate to have been around really successful business people, and business people who've never taken off. And the really successful guys, they take quite a holistic, balanced approach to their life in general. Okay. And what it does is it enables them to make better business decisions. And then you look at the guys who've never quite made it, or the ones who make it and then burn out.
Yeah.
All they're focusing on is the money. And I always say, if you chase the money, it will just keep running. The only pursuit that should be in your mind is the pursuit of excellence, because money is a byproduct of excellence. It's not something that you create; it's a byproduct.
Right.
What you can create is excellence. You can create value, and people will then pay for that. So entrepreneurship, suggests that your focus should be on doing what you love, because in doing what you love, you'll do an excellent job of it, and anybody will pay for an excellent product or an excellent service.
Okay, okay, that's wonderful. And I don't want to keep you long, so we're just going to put the
So, so this is the best technology ever created. This phone, I can do, yeah, or any smartphone. I mean, Android, iPhone, whatever. I can do half of my work, maybe even more, 60, 70% of my work I can do on my phone, because everything is in the cloud. So everything's in the cloud, everything's on the move. All of the online services I use, be they invoicing, be they reporting, analytics, whatever it might be, there's an app for it, right? So, I can do everything on the move. So what it means is I can use up all of what would be dead time. So, time you're traveling on the train, waiting for a bus, you're delayed at the airport, or you're in between doing things or whatever, that would normally be regarded as dead time. So I'm able to fill up all of that dead time with productivity, through the use of my mobile, accessing stuff that's in the cloud. um, and that's basically how I manage my time. That aside, I don't watch
Oh, you
TV.
don't?
So, no. So whilst everybody's watching Big Brother and EastEnders and X Factor, I mean, I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of X
Right.
Factor in my life. I've never watched 24. All of these,
Yeah,
series, things that come on. I've never
I
watched any of
completely
them.
understand.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I've never watched any of them. And it's not because I don't want to, but it's actually because I would rather do what I'm doing. And this is going back to the passionate bit. I'm so passionate about what I
yeah,
do. I would rather do it than watch this stuff on TV. Um, I mean, what I would do is when I do feel I need to unwind, I'll watch stuff that's on demand. So I might, watch something on Netflix or iPlay or
mm,
whatever. But um, but that's when I choose to. So I pull the content to me. I don't have to. I don't think there's anything wrong with watching those programs. I think what I'm saying is, those programs are normally scheduled on TV, so it means that you have to fall into the regularly scheduled
right, yeah,
program,
yeah, I
you know.
understand.
Bit. So it means that people are rushing to get home for 7 o'clock because they want to watch this,
Mm,
or they will stop their life because at 9 o'clock Game of Thrones is on or whatever,
mm,
right? And when I hear people say that on Facebook, oh, I'm stopping everything, drop
yeah,
everything, Game of Thrones, eight
yeah,
o'clock. I'm thinking, you can't be running a business because you just can't do that,
mm,
right? But people love this content so much, and it's great for the content providers. They're doing a marvelous job. Like, if you can create content that people will stop their life for, you're doing a good
yeah,
job, right? But if you're in business, that's not the way forward. You can't do that
yeah,
because it just means that you're probably not doing something that you really enjoy, or it's not a priority for you. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
I
Like,
understand. I think because in my
yeah,
case, so there was a time I call it the before and after of when I committed to my business. So before I used to do that. I used to kind of watch EastEnders and watch those things, but then after I made the decision to just continue and focus, now I find I don't have time to do that either because there's something I could be doing or reading to
right,
my
exactly.
expertise and get more passionate about my field. So yeah,
Exactly,
I can
exactly,
understand where you're
exactly.
coming from. So thank you. It's been wonderful to speak to you. I don't want to keep you for too
Good.
long.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And where can we find you? On the internet?
So if you Google my name, Julian Hall, I'm number one. If you just go to
Mhm.
julianhall.co.uk, you'll see me. Or if you Google the word entrepreneur, then you'll find me there as
Okay,
well.
great. And we'll provide links in the email. And just before you go, would you mind telling us about the gift that you have for everybody?
Yes. So I provide free coaching once a month, to businesses of all descriptions. So if you go onto my website, and you go to the contact form, then you can register for free
Mhm.
coaching. And I'll be happy to come along and give you, a free 30 to 60-minute coaching session.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Julian. It's been wonderful.
No worries. Take
Bye.
care.